You're listening to A Radio.
Thank you for joining us. You're listening to A Radio, and this is The Morning Moment. Follow us on Spreaker.com and click on the like button. You can find us on most social media platforms such as iTunes, Spotify and iHeartRadio. Go to our website, aradio.wordpress.com, for details, where you'll find more content and details on our podcasts and more. Every day, there are suddenly more and more stories emerging about China. Have you noticed? Maybe you haven't. Except in Canada, the media, or should I say more accurately, describe as the bought and paid for Trudeau media, and let's face it, God knows where the money's come from, because Canadians will never know. This story from an old favourite of mine, the article way too long, but I'm going to give you a flavour of it. It's entitled Dump China, Time to End Beijing's Pernicious Tech Empire. It's a bit of a long-winded title, but you get the gist. It's a great piece, and I urge you all to look it up on the Gatestone Institute. It comes from Gordon Chang. Here are the bullet points. China's window of vulnerability is only a few years at most, so this is the time for the world to act. The Ministry of Industry and Information Technology talks about the country committing 1.4 trillion in the next 5 years. China is also working on plundering Google, which has various operations in communist China, including its AI China Center in Beijing and partnerships with the country's two leading universities, Peking and Tsinghua. I think I should pronounce it. God knows, who cares? Yet the company has larger plans. Google, which has refused to work with the US Defense Department on artificial intelligence, is helping the Chinese military in that critical field. I'm just going to stop and interject for a second. When is a traitor a traitor? And when is a traitor not a traitor? When an American company is working in the military field, the defense field, and refuses to work with the Defense Department of the country that they started off in, there's something very wrong, I think. Anyway, the piece continues. The situation is hideous. The United States has to absolutely prohibit Google and other tech firms from doing business in China or with Chinese firms, according to Brandon Weichert. I think that's how you pronounce it. China's market is losing its attractiveness. The economy is in distress, suffering from both the coronavirus epidemic and systematic weakness, such as excessive indebtedness, smothering state controls, and xenophobic hostility to foreign investment. Now is the time to shut down Beijing's massive state-directed and government-funded effort to dominate the world's technologies. Yet again I interject. This is the point that I've been making from day one. We cannot afford, as any Western country, to allow China to dominate any industry. When you can't make a wooden shim, then you've got problems. And that's where we are right now. We're not even making wooden shims. We're importing them from China. And it's our wood. Anyway, the article continues. China, some say, is largely a land of rule-bound route learners, unquote. I don't know what that means, but there you go. The Chinese try, but rarely make breakthroughs on their own. Moreover, Xi Jinping, who demands that his regime dominate the technologies of the world, is fast eliminating the one essential ingredient of innovation, freedom. Totalitarianism promotes obedience, a quality not particularly helpful for developing the technologies of tomorrow. Yet despite everything, Xi's China has still managed to become a technology leader in critical fields such as quantum communications and 5G wireless communications. The Chinese, because of their success, are now racing to own the technologies of this century. China also has a weakness. Its economy is failing, and the regime, through especially provocative actions, is losing support of the international community. The country's window of vulnerability, however, is only a few years at most, so this is the time for the world to act. Thinker David Goldman persuasively argues that it does not matter whether the Chinese people can innovate. The regime have put together all the elements needed to dominate technology. Beijing spends enormous sums pursuant to, I don't know what that word is, crafted multi-year programs like the 13th Five-Year Plan, the Digital Silk Road effort, and the infamous Made in China 2025 initiative. When China spends, it spends big. Premier Li Qiang, whatever his name is, while issuing his work report at the National People's Congress meeting at the end of last month, announced a campaign to build, quote, new types of infrastructure. New types of infrastructure. In other words, technology. China, therefore, is going on a tech spending binge. More than a dozen Chinese municipalities, including Beijing, Shanghai, have since the beginning of this year committed to spend $935 billion, and corporations like Alibaba, Tencent will chip in. The Ministry of Industry and Information Technology talks about the country committing $1.4 trillion in the next 5 years. China can spend, but can it innovate in an oppressive political system? Oppressive political systems kill creativity in the arts and social sciences, but they also stifle other sciences. Innovation often does not benefit from top-down decisions that are often ill-conceived and therefore counterproductive. As Goldman points out, for the first time in its long history, China has succeeded in recruiting Western innovators on a large scale. There are, for instance, 50,000 foreigners working for national champion Huawei technologies, including, he writes, some of Europe's best scientists and engineers in the field. That was the formula for China's lead, quantum communications. Beijing took the breakthrough of an American. Albert Einstein described the phenomena of spooky action at a distance and expertise from Vienna, and created for itself at least half a decade lead in developing hack-proof quantum communications. In another quantum area, computing, China's homegrown effort is lagging. Google is far ahead with a 72-qubit computer. IBM's computer is 50 qubits. And China's, according to Zhu, whoever his name is, of the University of Science and Technology of China, is working on 24 qubits. China is also working on plundering Google, which has various operations in the People's Republic, including AI in the centre of Beijing and partnerships with country's 2 leading universities. So you're getting the picture, aren't you? And the article continues. I wanted to just give you a bit of it. It's a bit heavy, but the principle is what the Trump administration has been saying for some time, that China is plundering our brains. They're taking the intelligence of the US and other countries and making massive leaps forward, which only serve to undermine the security of the West, because their aim, make no mistake about this, they are not friends of the West. They intend to dominate the world. And they're not a democratic country, they're a communist country. And I want Canadians to understand this. Trudeau is actively working with a communist country. We should not be doing this. This is not good. If you can't understand the danger that presents to this country and any other country, God help us and God help you. But I think you will agree, the interference by China in the West, and even more disturbing, I think, that big tech in the US and other countries, let's just leave it at that, are openly, in some cases, working with China in direct opposition to their own country. Something is very wrong here. People are putting profits before their country. Let me say that again. People like the CEO of Google are putting profits before the country they started in. They didn't start in China. They started in the United States. Yet they are working actively to undermine the United States as the leader of the free world. How can you do this? How can anybody, in all honesty, do this? I'm going to just give you a little story, and this is a true story. I was in my final year at university, and I desperately wanted to come to the United States and work. I went to a job fair in Boston. It's the outskirts, actually, and I saw many companies, and most of them were involved with the defence industry. Because I am British by birth, they couldn't talk to me. They wouldn't talk to me. So I'm sorry, you're not a US citizen. We can't talk to you. So please tell me, what is the difference between an American company working to actively undermine the security of the United States, where I couldn't work in America because I was a Brit? There's something wrong with that picture, isn't there? Because Britain is part of NATO. We all work together. Britain is part of the Five Eyes. Yet they are told that no European can work there because they're not American citizens. The joke is, there's a British arm of the company that I was talking to. I could work there on the same project, I assume. Isn't that ridiculous? Yet we allow these large multinational companies to operate with impunity abroad, with not a worry, not a scare, no concern, nothing. There's something very wrong with this picture, isn't there, ladies and gentlemen? There's something very, very wrong. Why can't a Brit work in America, yet an American company can work in China actively against the United States? Riddle me that. And that's my comment.
You can find more at aradio.wordpress.com, where you can find links to us on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, iTunes, iHeartRadio, Gab, Spotify, and email. We're on Spotify under the podcast section. Type in Canadian Politics with a twist and you'll find us. We are continuing to reach out to you, so please pass these links on to your friends. Please click on the follow button on Spreaker.com. You can listen to all our morning moments at Spreaker.com/aradio. EHRADIO, a radio. And please click on the like button. Join us Monday, Wednesday and Friday at 11:45 Eastern, and tell your friends and pass the word. We only tell the truth, not what the mainstream media want you to know.